morning sun cast long shadows across the crystal fields of Kepler 442b as Kang Dae-ho watched his daughter chase butterfly-like creatures between the glowing formations. Sora laughed as the tiny aliens fluttered around her dark hair, their wings catching the light like fragments of rainbow. "Dad, look. They like me," she called out in Korean, then switched to standard as she always did when the Veltari were nearby. The crystalline beings found human languages difficult, but Sora had been learning their musical speech since they arrived on the mining colony 2 years ago. Dae-ho smiled despite the weight in his chest. Since his wife's death, moments like these felt precious and fragile. The colony was safe, quiet, far from the conflicts that plagued the inner systems. Here, Sora could grow up surrounded by wonder instead of war. Bellani approached with her usual graceful steps, her translucent skin reflecting the morning light in soft blues and greens. The young Velthari crystal tender had become fond of the human child, often bringing her interesting specimens from the deep caverns. "The crystals sing differently when the small human is near," Bellani said in her melodic voice. "They sense her joy." Dae-ho nodded. His research had shown that Velthari crystals responded to emotions, but Sora seemed to have an unusually strong effect on them. The formations grew brighter and hummed more actively when she was around. "She has that effect on everyone," Dae-ho replied, watching his daughter attempt to communicate with a cluster of silver-leafed plants. "Even the colony administrator smiles more since we arrived." The peaceful moment shattered when emergency sirens began wailing across the settlement. Dae-ho's communication device crackled to life with panicked voices in multiple languages. "All civilians to evacuation stations immediately. Calyx raiders detected on approach vector." "This is not a drill." Felani's skin shifted to alarmed yellows and reds. The Calyx were known throughout the galaxy as ruthless pirates who took slaves and destroyed everything else. No Outer Rim colony had ever successfully defended against them. "Sora," Dae-ho shouted, running toward his daughter. "We have to go now." The little girl looked confused as her father scooped her up, her butterfly friends scattering in all directions. Velani followed them as they rushed toward the research facility where Dae-ho kept their emergency supplies. The ground shook as the first Calyx ships entered the atmosphere. Through the transparent aluminum windows, Dae-ho could see dark vessels descending like hungry insects. Weapons fire lit up the sky as the colony's automated defense systems tried to fight back. "The evacuation shuttles," Dae-ho said, checking his equipment pack. "The spaceport is only 2 kilometers. If we move fast..." An explosion rocked the building, throwing them all to the floor. Sora cried out as debris fell around them. When the dust cleared, Dae-ho saw that a support beam had fallen across the main exit. They were trapped. "There's another way," Bellani said, her skin now pulsing with urgent patterns. "Through the crystal caverns. My people use them to move between sectors." More explosions echoed outside, getting closer. Dae-ho could hear the distinctive whine of Calyx ground vehicles approaching. He grabbed Sora and his emergency pack, following Bellani toward a hidden entrance he'd never noticed before. The crystal caves were beautiful and terrifying. Formations that had taken centuries to grow stretched into the darkness, glowing with soft internal light. Bellani moved through them like she was born there, her feet finding safe paths between the sharp edges. "The evacuation shuttles," Dae-ho said as they moved deeper. "Are we going the right way?" Bellani's patterns shifted to something that looked like sadness. The spaceport was hit first. No shuttles left. But these caves go deep, safe places where the raiders cannot follow. They climbed through narrow passages and across crystal bridges that sang under their feet. Sora had stopped crying and was staring in wonder at the glowing walls, but Dae-ho could see the fear in her eyes. Behind them, the sounds of destruction grew louder. The Calyx were known for their thorough searches. They would find the cave entrance eventually. "How deep do these go?" Dae-ho asked. "To the planet's heart," Bellani replied. "My people have tended these crystals for 3 generations. We know every path, every safe chamber." They reached a wide cavern where other Veltari had gathered. Dae-ho counted 12 adults and several young ones, their skin patterns all showing the same anxious colors. An elderly Velthari with deep blue markings on his face approached them. "Velkorin," Bellani said respectfully. "I brought the humans. The child needs protection." The elder looked at Sora with large, gentle eyes. "The small one carries bright energy. The crystals approve of her presence," and he turned to Dae-ho. "Your research has helped our people understand our bond with the crystal formations. We are in your debt." "No debt," Deho said quickly. We're just grateful for shelter. The cavern shook as explosions echoed from above. Dust rained down from the ceiling and some of the smaller crystals began to crack. The calyx were getting close. Velcorin's skin patterns shifted to something Deho had never seen before. Deep reds and oranges mixed with silver streaks. They bring violence to our sacred places, the elder said quietly. This cannot be allowed. Your people don't fight, Deho said. Everyone knows the Velthari are peaceful. Maybe if we hide deeper? There is nowhere deeper to go, Velani said. Her own patterns were changing, becoming more complex and intense. This is the heart chamber, the most sacred of all places. Sora tugged on her father's sleeve.
Dad, what's happening?
Why are the pretty people changing colors? Before Deho could answer, the sound of drilling equipment echoed from the cave entrance. The calyx had found them. Heavy footsteps and harsh voices got louder as the raiders moved through the passages. Velcorin stood straighter, his patterns now showing solid determination. Velani, take the child to the crystal pool. Keep her safe no matter what happens. Elder, we cannot fight them, one of the younger Velthari protested. It goes against everything we are. What we are, Velcorin said slowly, is what we choose to be in this moment. The first calyx warrior appeared at the cavern entrance, a massive creature covered in battle scars and armed with weapons that could cut through stone. More followed, their red eyes scanning the glowing chamber. Their leader, a beast twice the size of any human, stepped forward. Surrender the human child, he demanded in broken standard. Humans make good slaves in core systems. Give her to us and die quickly. Velcorin moved to stand between the raiders and Sora, his crystalline skin now glowing with patterns none of the humans had ever seen before. Behind him, the other Velthari formed a protective circle around the child and her father. No, the elder said simply. The calyx leader laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Peaceful crystal farmers want to fight. This will be amusing. But as the raiders raised their weapons, something changed in the cavern. The crystal formations began to resonate with the Velthari's emotional patterns, amplifying their determination and broadcasting it through the stone itself. The walls started to sing with harmonies that spoke of protection, sacrifice, and a love stronger than fear. For the first time in their species' recorded history, the Velthari prepared to fight. The first shot from the calyx weapons turned a section of crystal wall into glowing fragments. Velcorin moved faster than Deho thought possible for the elderly Velthari, diving behind a large formation while the other crystal tenders scattered to defensive positions they seemed to know by instinct. Take the child deeper, Velcorin called out to Velani as energy blasts lit up the cavern like a deadly light show. Velani grabbed Sora's hand, pulling her toward a narrow passage between two massive crystal pillars. Deho followed, his heart racing as he heard the distinctive sound of mining equipment being turned into weapons. The Velthari had no military tools, but they knew how to cut stone and shape crystal. Dad, I'm scared, Sora cried, pressing against him as they reached a smaller chamber filled with pools of luminescent water. I know, sweetheart. The pretty people are going to keep us safe, Deho said, hoping his voice sounded more confident than he felt. Through the crystal walls, they could hear the battle raging in the main cavern. The calyx had superior weapons, but the Velthari knew every inch of these caves. Deho watched in amazement as Velani touched a section of wall and somehow made it sing a high, pure note. Moments later, they heard a rumbling crash from the main chamber. Tunnel collapse, Velani explained, her skin patterns now showing fierce protective colors. We can control the crystal growth. Make barriers, create traps. Her expression grew sad. But it will not be enough. They have too many weapons, and we are not warriors. The sounds of fighting continued for what felt like hours. Sometimes the weapons fire would stop, and they could hear calyx voices shouting in their harsh language. Other times the crystal formations would sing as the Velthari triggered defensive measures that had been built into the cave system over generations. Deho counted the voices. He'd seen 12 adult Velthari in the main chamber, but the sounds of battle suggested their numbers were dropping. Each time the weapons fire grew quieter, he knew another gentle crystal tender had fallen defending a human child they'd known for only 2 years. Why are they doing this? He whispered to Velani. Your people don't even know us well. The young Velthari's patterns shifted to something that looked like surprise. The small one carries pure light, she said simply. When the crystals sing around her, they sing of joy without fear, wonder without suspicion. This is rare in the galaxy. It must be protected. Sora had fallen asleep despite the distant sounds of battle, exhausted by fear and adrenaline. She curled up next to one of the glowing pools, and even in sleep, the crystals around her hummed more softly, as if trying not to wake her. On the second day, Velani's skin went completely white. Deho had learned enough about Velthari expressions to know this meant terrible grief. "Velcorin?" he asked quietly. "Still fights," she replied, but her voice carried the weight of loss. But many others. The crystals no longer sing their songs. By the third day, the weapons fire had stopped completely. Velani's patterns showed the deepest sadness Deho had ever seen from her species, mixed with something else, a fierce determination that reminded him of protective mother animals he'd studied on various worlds. Heavy footsteps echoed through the passages, getting closer. The Calyx had won the battle, and were now searching the deeper caves systematically. Sora woke as the sounds grew louder, immediately sensing the danger. "The bad monsters are coming," she whispered. "Not monsters," Deho corrected gently. "Just people who make bad choices." The footsteps stopped just outside their chamber. Through the crystal barrier, they could see the massive silhouette of a Calyx warrior, his scanner beeping as it detected human life signs. "Found them," the raider called out in his own language. More footsteps approached, and soon 5 of the armored creatures stood at the chamber entrance. Their leader was even larger than the first one Deho had seen, covered in ritual scars and carrying weapons that looked like they could level buildings. He spoke in accented standard human child. "Come out now. Make this easy for everyone." Velani stepped forward, placing herself between the raiders and Sora. Her skin pattern showed no fear, only absolute resolve. "No." The Calyx leader made a sound that might have been laughter. "Little crystal farmer wants to play warrior? Where are your friends?" "Dead in the main chamber with the old one." "Velcorin is dead?" Velani asked, her patterns flickering with grief. "Fought well for a peaceful species," the raider admitted. "Took 3 of my best warriors with him when he brought down that crystal ceiling. But fighting is over now. Give us the child." "No," Velani repeated. The leader raised his weapon, a massive energy cannon that could punch through battle armor. "Then you die too." But before he could fire, the crystal pools around them began to glow brighter. Sora, frightened by the towering alien warriors, had unconsciously reached out to touch the nearest formation. Her fear and the desperate love she felt from the Velthari who had protected her created a resonance that spread through the entire cave system. The walls began to sing, not the gentle harmony Deho was used to, but something deeper and more powerful. The song carried the story of the last 3 days, the courage of beings who had never fought before, the sacrifice of crystal tenders who died protecting a child they barely knew, the love that could make pacifists into warriors. And somehow, impossibly, that song reached beyond the caves, far above. The first human rescue ship dropped out of hyperspace. Captain Nam Subin of the UES Steadfast had followed the delayed distress beacon from Kepler 442b, expecting to find empty ruins and scattered bodies. Instead, her sensors detected a massive energy resonance coming from beneath the planet's surface. "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "we're picking up some kind of harmonic transmission from the crystal caves. It's like music, but there are human life signs embedded in the pattern." In the cave chamber, the Calyx leader hesitated. The crystal song was growing louder, and his warriors were looking nervous. Even the most hardened raiders knew that some things in the galaxy were better left alone, and the alien melody carried a weight of emotion that made their weapons feel suddenly inadequate. "Just kill them all," one of his subordinates growled. "Take the child and go." But before any of them could move, new sounds echoed through the caves, the distinctive whine of human military equipment powering up, and voices speaking in crisp professional standard. Life signs detected in the lower chambers. Multiple hostiles present. Rules of engagement are weapons free. Protect all civilians. The Calyx leader's eyes widened as he realized what that meant. Humans. Military humans. And they'd heard the story the crystals were singing. Captain Nam Subin led the rescue team personally, following the resonance signal through passages littered with crystal fragments and Calyx bodies. At each level, the evidence of the battle became clearer. Peaceful beings who had turned mining equipment into weapons, who had used their knowledge of crystal formation to create defensive barriers, who had died one by one protecting something precious. When they finally reached the heart chamber, the scene stopped even the hardened soldiers in their tracks. Velkorn's body lay beside a massive crystal formation, his patterns frozen in colors that spoke of defiance and sacrifice. Around him, 11 other Velthari had made their final stand, their mining tools clutched in crystalline hands that had never been meant for war. And in the smaller chamber beyond, they found Velani standing protectively over a sleeping human child and her father, facing down 5 of the galaxy's most feared raiders with nothing but determination and love. The rescue was swift and efficient. The Calyx, outnumbered and outgunned, surrendered without firing another shot. But as Captain Nam Subin knelt beside Velkorn's body and felt the crystal formation still singing their story of sacrifice, she knew that something had changed forever. A species that had never known violence had chosen to fight and die for a single human child. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant. Admiral Park Ji-woo stood in the center of the Terran Defense Force Command Center, watching the footage from Kepler 442b for the 5th time. Around him, hardened military officers who had seen decades of warfare sat in complete silence as the crystal formations sang their story of sacrifice. The recording showed everything. Velkorn's final stand as he brought down a crystal ceiling on 3 Calyx warriors. Velani's desperate defense of a human child she had known for only 2 years. 11 peaceful beings who had transformed from crystal tenders into warriors in the span of 3 days. All for the sake of one little girl named Sora. "Sir," his aide, Commander Lee Minseo, spoke quietly, "the Colonial Council is ready for your report." Park Ji-woo nodded, but his eyes remained fixed on the screen. In 40 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. Species fought for territory, resources, survival. They didn't sacrifice themselves for alien children who meant nothing to their own genetic future. "Have the Velthari ever shown military capability before?" he asked. "Never, sir. Their entire recorded history shows them as pacifists. They've never even defended themselves from raiders. They just hide in the crystal caves until the danger passes." Commander Lee paused. "Until now?" The Admiral finally turned away from the screen. "And now 12 of them died fighting the Calyx hand-to-hand with mining equipment." He shook his head. "Get me President Lee Hae-won. Emergency priority." Within an hour, every major leader on Earth was gathered in the emergency council chambers. President Lee Hae-won sat at the head of the table, her expression grave as she watched the same footage that had stunned the military commanders. "The public response?" she asked her media advisor. "Unprecedented, Madam President. The footage leaked 3 hours ago. Social media is exploding. Protests are forming outside the Calyx embassy demanding justice. Parents are holding vigils for the Velthari who died protecting Sora." The advisor paused. "There are calls for military action." Defense Minister Kim Tae-hyun leaned forward. "Madam President, this isn't just about one colony anymore. Word is spreading through the outer rim. Every species is watching to see how humanity responds when someone protects our children." President Lee studied the faces around the table. She had been in politics for 20 years, long enough to recognize a moment that would define history. "Admiral Park, in your professional opinion, what are our options?" "3 choices, Madam President. First, we express condolences and move on with business as usual. Second, we provide some aid to help rebuild the Velthari colonies. Third," he paused. "Third, we make this mean something." "Explain the third option." Park Ji-woo activated a holographic display showing Velthari territory. "We declare their entire species under our official protection. Any aggression against Velthari civilians becomes an act of war against Earth. We deploy fleets to defend their colonies and grant them full citizenship rights in human space." The room fell silent. Economic Advisor Choi Min-jung spoke first. The cost would be enormous. Defending multiple star systems, rebuilding their infrastructure, integrating their population, and the political implications, added Foreign Minister Yoon Jae-sung. The Galactic Trade Federation will see this as aggressive expansion. Other species might view it as humanity claiming territory through protection treaties. President Lee stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. Below, she could see crowds gathering in the streets, many carrying images of Velkorn and the other fallen Velthari. "What does the legal department say about precedent?" Legal advisor Nam Hyo-jin cleared her throat. "There is no precedent, Madam President. No species in galactic history has ever declared another species under total protection. The closest example is mutual defense treaties, but those are between equals. This would be different. Different how? This would be a unilateral declaration that humanity considers the Velthari to be under our care. Like they were our own people. President Lee turned back to the group. Admiral Park, if we make this declaration, can we back it up? Yes, Madam President. The 3rd, 7th, and 12th fleets can be deployed within 72 hours. Our industrial capacity can rebuild their colonies within 18 months, and he smiled grimly. Our enemies will think twice before testing whether we mean it. Minister Kim spoke up. There's another factor to consider. Intelligence reports suggest this could change the entire balance of power in the Outer Rim. If word gets out that attacking peaceful species brings down the full weight of human military might, pirates and raiders might think twice before attacking anyone. President Lee finished. Not just the Velthari, Economic Advisor Choi frowned. But the cost, Madam President. The budget impact. President Lee looked at her sharply. Advisor Choi, do you have children? Yes, Madam President, 2 daughters. If they were in danger on some distant world, and aliens you'd never met died protecting them, what would you want Earth's response to be? Choi's expression changed. I understand, Madam President. This isn't about economics or politics, President Lee said firmly. This is about what kind of species we want to be. The Velthari showed us something beautiful, that love can be stronger than self-preservation, that protecting innocence is worth any sacrifice. She looked around the table. If we can't honor that, we don't deserve to call ourselves civilized. Admiral Park nodded. There's one more consideration, Madam President. The psychological impact on our own people. When citizens see their government protecting those who protected our children, it strengthens social unity. Soldiers fight harder when they believe their cause is just. And our enemies? President Lee asked. We'll learn that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our numbers. It's our loyalty to those who earn it. The debate continued for 6 more hours, but the decision was never really in doubt. By the time Ambassador Choi Yuna was called in to draft the formal declaration, every person in that room understood what needed to be done. The Velthari Protection Decree was signed at 0347 Earth Standard Time, making it the fastest emergency legislation in human history. President Lee's announcement to the United Earth Assembly became the most watched political speech in recorded history. Citizens of Earth, she began, standing before representatives of every human world. 3 days ago, 12 members of the Velthari species chose to abandon their most fundamental nature to protect one human child. They had no obligation to do so. They gained nothing from this sacrifice except the knowledge that an innocent life would continue. She paused, letting the words sink in. In response, Earth hereby declares the entire Velthari species to be under our official protection. Any act of aggression against Velthari civilians will be considered an act of war against all humanity. We will defend their colonies with the same commitment we defend our own worlds. We will rebuild what was destroyed and stand guard over what remains. The assembly erupted in applause, but President Lee raised her hand for silence. Let me be clear about what this means. To the galaxy's predators, to the raiders and pirates who see peaceful species as easy targets, you have been warned. Touch them, and discover why the universe fears humanity more than any other threat. Within hours of the announcement, the first human battle fleets were already entering hyperspace, heading for Velthari territory. Captain Nam Tae-jun of the UES Retribution sent a simple message to all ships in his battle group. We're not just defending allies. We're defending the idea that innocence deserves protection. Make sure the galaxy understands the difference. On Kepler 442b, Sora sat with Velani in the rebuilt Crystal Gardens, watching human ships patrol the skies above. The little girl didn't fully understand what had happened, but she knew that the pretty crystal people were safe now. Will the bad monsters come back? She asked. Velani's skin showed patterns of absolute certainty. No, little one. Your people have spoken. The crystals sing of it. We are protected now, forever. High above, the sensors of passing merchant ships detected the human fleet's presence and immediately adjusted their courses to avoid any possibility of conflict. Word was already spreading through the galactic communication networks. Humanity had drawn a line around the Velthari, and everyone wanted to see what would happen to the first species foolish enough to cross it. They wouldn't have to wait long. 6 months after the Velthari Protection Decree, Admiral Park Ji-woo stood on the observation deck of the UES Unity, watching the construction of New Geneva Station above the rebuilt Velthari homeworld. Below, crystal cities grew in harmony with human architecture, their spires singing in frequencies that could be heard from orbit. Admiral, his aide Commander Lee Min-seo approached with the latest reports. The quarterly assessment is complete. Park Ji-woo accepted the datapad, already knowing what it would contain. The numbers were remarkable even by human standards. Piracy incidents? Down 87% galaxy-wide, sir. Not just in Velthari space, everywhere. The Galactic Supremacy has officially disbanded their raiding fleets. The Voss pirates are now operating cargo transport services. Even the Sindari have requested legitimate trade licenses. The Admiral nodded, unsurprised. And our defensive commitments? 12 species have formally requested protection treaties similar to the Velthari arrangement. The Altarian Council was first, then the benthic communes, the Silicon Collective. Min-seo paused. Sir, the diplomatic corps is overwhelmed. Through the viewing port, Park Ji-woo could see a Velthari crystal tender working alongside human engineers on the station's outer hull. The aliens' natural ability to grow and shape crystalline structures had revolutionized human construction techniques, while human defensive technology gave the Velthari the security they'd never known. What's the assessment of our military capacity? He asked. Stretched thin but manageable, sir. The integration of Velthari crystal technology has improved our ship efficiency by 40%. Faster-than-light communication through resonance crystals, enhanced hull strength, improved energy storage. Min-seo smiled. The protected have become protectors in their own way. The door chimed and Dr. Lim Sang-wook entered the observation lounge. The xenopsychologist had become Earth's leading expert on interspecies relations since the decree. Admiral, you wanted to see my analysis of the galactic response? Please, Doctor. In simple terms, Dr. Lim activated a holographic display showing the galaxy's political structure. 6 months ago, galactic politics operated on pure predator-prey dynamics. Strong species took from weak species, and everyone accepted this as natural law. He highlighted several star systems in different colors. Today, we've introduced a new concept, earned protection. Species aren't just strong or weak anymore. They can become valuable enough to earn humanity's protection. And how has this changed behavior patterns? Remarkably, sir. Species that used to prey on others are now trying to prove their worth as potential allies. The Galacts have sent diplomatic envoys offering their services as system guards. Former pirates are founding legitimate businesses. Even predatory species are moderating their behavior because they've realized that attacking the innocent might bring human intervention. Admiral Park studied the display. What about the species requesting protection? Are they genuine allies or just seeking security? Both, sir. But the Velthari model has set a standard. Species requesting our protection understand they need to contribute something valuable in return. The Altarians offer their mathematical abilities for navigation calculations. The benthic communes share their deep ocean mining techniques. The Silicon Collective provides advanced computing power. Commander Lee looked up from her datapad. Sir, there's something else in today's reports. Intelligence suggests the Galactic Supremacy is undergoing internal reformation. Explain. Supreme War Chief Zekmar was overthrown 3 weeks ago. The new leadership is calling itself the Galactic Federation, and they've sent formal requests to join the Galactic Trade Organization as a legitimate government. Dr. Lim nodded. The psychological impact has been profound, Admiral. When humanity demonstrated that protecting innocence is worth more than personal gain, it changed how entire species view strength and weakness. Through the station's communication system, they could hear the sound of human children playing with young Velthari in the residential sections. The crystal-tender children's natural empathy had helped human kids process trauma and fear, while the human children's boundless energy had taught the Velthari youngsters about joy and play. There's one more thing, Commander Lee said quietly. Personal message for you, sir. From Kepler 442b. Admiral Park accepted the message pad and activated the recording. Sora's face appeared, now 9 years old and speaking fluent Velthari alongside her native Korean. Hello, Admiral Park, she said in careful standard, then switched to the musical tones of crystal song. The translation appeared below her words. The crystals sing your name with gratitude frequencies. Felani says you're the reason the pretty people don't have to be afraid anymore. The little girl switched back to standard. I wanted to thank you for keeping my friends safe. Velani is teaching me how to help the crystals grow, and she says humans and Velthari together can make the galaxy more beautiful. She smiled. Daddy says I have to do my homework now, but the crystals help me with math. They like patterns. The recording ended with Sora waving goodbye while Velani's crystalline hand rested gently on her shoulder, the alien skin patterns showing deep contentment. Dr. Lim cleared his throat. Admiral, there's been an interesting development regarding the child. The Velthari Council has formally designated her as the first human crystal singer. It's a position that's never existed before. What does that mean? She's become a cultural bridge, sir. The first being to truly understand both species' emotional languages. Universities across human space are studying her development. There are theories that she represents the future of interspecies cooperation. Admiral Park looked back at the construction outside. Human and Velthari workers moved together with an efficiency that would have been impossible 6 months ago. Each species contributing its unique strengths to their shared projects. Doctor, what's your assessment of long-term stability? Can this new dynamic last? Dr. Lim considered carefully. Sir, we've essentially rewritten the fundamental rules of galactic civilization. Instead of might making right, we've established that moral courage earns protection. It's created an incentive structure that rewards good behavior rather than predatory success. But it only works if humanity remains committed to our role as protectors. The moment we become selective about who deserves protection, or start using our power for conquest instead of defense, the entire system collapses. Commander Lee nodded. That's why the Parliamentary Ethics Committee has established the Protection Review Board, sir. Every species requesting our protection undergoes evaluation to ensure they're genuine victims rather than opportunistic aggressors. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Admiral Park activated the communication display to see President Lee Hae-won's face. Admiral, I wanted to inform you personally. The Galactic Council has voted to establish the protection protocols as official galactic law. Any species that demonstrates the Velthari's level of moral courage in protecting innocence can request protection from any species capable of providing it. Admiral Park felt a moment of profound satisfaction. Madam President, does this mean other species are beginning to offer protection as well? The Centauri Federation has offered protection to 3 smaller species. The Andromedan Collective is considering similar arrangements. Humanity didn't just protect the Velthari. We created a template for how civilization should work. After the communication ended, Admiral Park turned to his staff. Assessments aside, are we actually making the galaxy a better place? Dr. Lim smiled. Sir, let me share one final statistic. Interspecies violence is at the lowest level in recorded galactic history. Trade is up, cooperation is increasing, and for the first time ever, advanced species are actively protecting primitive ones instead of exploiting them. Through the observation port, they watched as a small transport ship approached the station. It carried the distinctive markings of the Calyx Federation. Former pirates turned legitimate traders, now working to rebuild what their raiding had destroyed. Commander Lee checked her scanner. Sir, they're carrying a shipment of rare metals as payment for the medical supplies we sent to their relief stations. Former enemies become trading partners, Dr. Lim observed. The galaxy is learning that cooperation is more profitable than conquest. Admiral Park thought about Velcorin's sacrifice, about 12 peaceful beings who had chosen to fight and die for a human child they barely knew. That moment of moral courage had transformed not just human policy, but the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. In the residential sections, Sora's laughter echoed through crystal corridors where human children played alongside young Velthari, learning each other's languages and sharing dreams that spanned species. The protected had become family, and family was worth everything. The galaxy had learned humanity's greatest lesson, that true strength wasn't the ability to take what you wanted, but the willingness to protect what others needed. And in protecting the innocent, humanity had found something more valuable than any conquest. They had found their place as guardians of galactic peace. As the stars wheeled overhead, Admiral Park knew that the universe had become a safer place, one protected species at a time. Supreme War Chief Zekimar of the Calyx Supremacy threw his drinking cup across the command chamber, watching it shatter against the metal wall. Around him, his sub-chiefs kept their eyes down, afraid to meet his gaze as reports continued streaming in from across Calyx territory. "Repeat that," he growled at the communications officer. "Sir, the Terran Defense Force has deployed 3 full battle fleets to Velthari space. Intelligence estimates over 400 human warships now patrol former raid targets. The humans are also beginning construction of orbital defense platforms around every Velthari colony." Zekmar's massive fists clenched. The Calyx had raided the Outer Rim for over 3 centuries, taking what they pleased from species too weak to defend themselves. No government had ever challenged them directly, until now. "And what of our own operations?" he asked. Sub-Chief Bractor, the survivor of the Kepler 442b raid, stepped forward nervously. "Sir, Raids 17 through 23 have been cancelled. The target colonies now have human patrol ships in orbit. Raids 24 and 25 encountered direct resistance." "What kind of resistance?" Bractor's voice grew smaller. "Human warships, sir. They were waiting for us." The war chief's eyes narrowed. "Waiting?" "The humans seem to know our raid patterns. They position their ships exactly where we plan to attack. And, sir," Bractor hesitated, "they don't just drive us away. They hunt us down." Another sub-chief, Grokthon, added grimly. "The Voss raiding fleet tried to hit a Velthari mining station in the Kepler system yesterday. Only 1 ship returned. The human captain let it escape specifically to carry word back to us." Zekmar leaned back in his command throne. "What was the message?" "No message, sir, just what they did to 11 heavy raiders with a single human cruiser." The war chief had heard rumors, but he needed to see for himself. "Show me the tactical footage." The holographic display activated, showing the attack on the mining station. 11 Calyx ships, all heavily armed and battle-tested, approached what should have been an easy target. The Velthari mining platform had no weapons, no shields, just crystalline structures that glowed softly in the void. But waiting between the raiders and their target was a single human heavy cruiser, the UES Indomitable. "Captain." Yoon Soo-jin's voice came through the communication channels, calm and professional. "Calyx vessels, you are approaching a colony under Earth's protection. Turn around now or be destroyed." On the recording, Zekmar could hear his own raider captain's response. 1 human ship against 11? You must be joking." What happened next lasted exactly 17 minutes. The human ship didn't fight like other species. There was no wild aggression, no desperate maneuvering. Instead, Captain Yoon's ship moved with deadly precision, targeting specific systems on each Calyx vessel with surgical accuracy. Engines were disabled first, then weapons, then life support. The Calyx raiders found themselves helpless, drifting in space while the human ship systematically worked through their entire fleet. When it was over, 10 ships were dead hulks and the 11th barely functional. Captain Yoon's final transmission was delivered in the same calm tone. "Tell your leaders what happens when you threaten our friends." Zekmar watched in silence as the lone surviving ship limped away from the battle. Around him, his sub-chiefs waited for his reaction. "How many ships did we lose this week?" he finally asked. 47, sir," Grokthon replied, "and that's not counting the vessels that returned too damaged to fight again." "Our recruitment numbers?" "Down 60%, sir. Young warriors are refusing to join raiding fleets. They say attacking the crystal farmers brings down human wrath and humans fight like—" He paused. "Like what?" "Like demons who have learned patience, sir." Zekmar stood and walked to the viewing port, looking out at his fleet. Once, over 500 Calyx ships had answered his call. Now fewer than 200 remained operational, and half of those were crewed by warriors who jumped at shadows. "What do our spies report about human military doctrine?" he asked. Intelligence Chief Formack stepped forward with a data pad. "Sir, human warfare appears to follow specific patterns. They prefer overwhelming force applied precisely rather than prolonged conflict. They study their enemies carefully, then strike once with complete commitment." "And their current disposition?" 3 human fleets totaling 412 ships now patrol Velthari territory. "But sir, that's not the concerning part." Zekmar turned. "What is?" "Those ships represent less than 15% of human military capability. Intelligence suggests they have over 3,000 warships in reserve, plus industrial capacity to build more faster than any other known species." The war chief felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: genuine concern. "What about the other raiding clans? The Sindari pirates? The Voss supremacy?" All reducing their operations, sir. The Sindari have stopped raiding entirely in sectors with human presence. The Voss Supremacy is negotiating with the Galactic Trade Federation for legitimate shipping contracts. Vormak activated another display showing galactic trade routes. Sir, piracy is down 47% in the last month. Not just against Velthari targets, against everyone. The humans have introduced a new variable into galactic politics. What variable? Unpredictability, sir. Other species follow patterns. They defend their own territory, protect their own trade routes, retaliate against direct attacks. But humans, Vormak paused. Humans will cross the galaxy to defend aliens they've never met, if those aliens prove themselves worthy of protection. Subchief Bractor spoke up. Sir, there are rumors that other species are beginning to request human protection. The Altarian Council reportedly sent a delegation to Earth last week. Zekmar's expression darkened. If humans start accepting more species under their protection, our raiding territory shrinks to nothing, sir. And eventually someone we attack will have human friends. The war chief walked back to his throne, his mind racing through possibilities. The Galactic Supremacy had built their entire civilization on raiding weaker species. If that was no longer possible, what would they become? Options, he commanded. Intelligence Chief Vormak cleared his throat. 3 possibilities, sir. First, we could challenge the humans directly, launch a full assault on their battle fleets and attempt to break their will through superior numbers. Analysis? Inadvisable, sir. Even if we won, which is doubtful, the cost would cripple our military for decades. And human industrial capacity suggests they could rebuild faster than we could. Second option? We could continue raiding but avoid any systems with human presence or protection treaties. That leaves what, 10% of our current territory? Less, sir, and shrinking as more species request human protection. Zekmar's claws dug into the arms of his throne. Third option? Vormak hesitated. We could negotiate, seek legitimate trade relationships. Learn to profit through commerce instead of conquest. The silence in the command chamber was deafening. For a species that had known only warfare and piracy for centuries, the suggestion was almost incomprehensible. Finally, Sub-Chief Grukthan spoke quietly. Sir, my nephew was on one of the ships that faced the human cruiser. He said something before he died in the medical bay. What? He said the humans didn't fight with hatred or anger. They fought with sadness, like they were disappointed in us for making them do it. Zekmar stared at his officers. Disappointed? He said their captain's final message wasn't a threat. It was advice, like a parent warning a child about consequences. The war chief turned back to the viewing port, watching his diminished fleet patrol the edges of space that was no longer safe to raid. In the distance, he could see the running lights of a human patrol ship, moving with the confidence of absolute authority. For the first time in his life, Supreme War Chief Zekmar wondered if the Galactic Supremacy was facing an enemy they couldn't defeat through strength alone. An enemy that fought not for conquest or revenge, but for something the Galax had never understood, the protection of innocence. And deep in his warrior's heart, he knew that kind of enemy was the most dangerous of all.